Okay, now I'm going to share screen. It wouldn't let me do that from the share screen thing for some reason. So, all right, so let me start over again. Okay, so I'm going to create just a circle because so I'm going to create a circle with this. And so, because that's kind of, and all I really need is one circle, all right? And so there's a couple different ways of doing this. I'm going to show you, I would like to show you from the drop down because then you can know where to find it, okay? And I'll show you the shortcut later. But I'm going to go down to object because it's an object, right? It's on a board. I'm going to go to make, and it's go down to pattern. I'm going to make a pattern. Okay. And it says that it's going to add it to my swatch panel, so it's over there. And I got to bring this down here. So here's the pattern options, all right? And so you can see a preview of this, and it's not super cool right now. What I'm going to do is it's a grid, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go like brick by brick like this, so it's a little offset. And I'm going to, yeah, half is good. And then I'm just going to add a little space to it, okay? So, so 0.5. And 0.5. So now I got a little space, okay? So all halftone pattern is like, you know, some color and then some not color, some negative space that becomes a tone visually to us, all right? So once I've done that, I'm going to just hit done, okay? And now I've got my pattern over here. And so I don't need this anymore. I'm going to delete this, and I will show you how that works. So now I can create a shape, and I can fill it with the pattern, and now I've got this halftone pattern. It's a little big though, so I could start by making my pattern a little smaller, or what I can do is I can go up here to Object, Transform, and Scale, because I want to change the scale of the halftone pattern. So you're going to get this right here. Make sure Preview's on so that you can see what happens. And we don't want to transform objects. We only want to transform patterns. So I'm going to uncheck objects. So it just has patterns. And I'm going to make it 50% smaller. Okay. Okay, so that's like more of a more textural pattern. That's okay. I'm going to hit OK. Okay. And so now I got a pattern. All right. So I got one pattern there. I'm going to create another pattern, but this time I'm going to make I can make my own shape. So it doesn't have to be a circle. It can be, for this I'm going to make a so I got like a vertical, I'm going to make a cross. So I'm just going to copy that. So Command C, copy, Command Shift V to paste in place. And then I'm going to just flip it horizontal. So I've created a plus. And I'm just going to use the Pathfinder to make it one shape. I don't need to do that. It can be as many shapes as I want, but I just like to make it a shape. So I've made myself a little plus, make it a little smaller. And I could go up to Object, create a pattern, or I could just hold down and I could drag it over here to, why didn't that work? Should have worked if I held down Alt, and I don't know why that's not working. So I'm going to go back up here and create another pattern again. So make a pattern, okay. And so now it's got maybe a plaid pattern, but I don't want that. It's kind of like I made myself a grid. That could be cool. So maybe I could save a copy of that. So maybe I want that. So I saved a copy. But in this, I'm going to go by grid like I did before. Maybe do hex by column. Oh, that's kind of interesting though. Yeah, that could be a cool pattern, right? Like, so a pattern is just like a halftone, right? And so, so I don't. That's not what I really want though. So I'm gonna go like brick by brick. No, I'll go back to I'll go by the hex by row, but I'm gonna like put some more space. This time we use 0.7. Okay, so now I got a halftone pattern, but it's like it's crosses instead, just to be something a little different. It could be anything. It could be shamrocks. It could be It could be anything. We'll talk more about making patterns and having fun with that another time. But this is just a really simple way of first making a pattern, but also making a halftone. The next thing, so I'm done with that. So now I can fill my circle with the pad. That's the other, here's the, so now I got 3 patterns. That didn't take me very long. Didn't take me very long at all. And now I got 3 different like patterns. So, so now you got your patterns, and they can fill in any shape. So like you could, remember we were doing the pencil tool last time. And so I'm gonna grab the pencil tool. And now I can make a shape that's like, and I can fill it with like a pattern. So let's I'll make a circle though, because last time I was showing you how we could make it like a shadow. Okay, so here we got a circle, and now I'm going to use the pencil tool to create like a shadow on it. It overlaps a little bit, and I'm not going to worry too much about that. But now I've got like, here I'm going to make it crosses, and I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Scale, and make sure that Transform Object isn't on, and then, okay. So now it's a little bit smaller. I'm going to show you, I don't have time to show you today, but I'll show you how we can make a clipping mask to clean this up the same way we did in Photoshop. But for now, I just want to show you how you can use shape to create, you know, these patterns and stuff like that in here. And the cool thing is, now one way you can do it, and now for Photoshop, one thing I could do is I could create a pattern in here. I'll use this one where I've already made the pattern smaller. Okay. So, and then I can just copy this, and I can bring this into Photoshop, and I can paste it again as Smart Object. And now I've got a halftone in here that I can play with it, but it's kind of locked into a shape. It's kind of locked into this sort of shape, and that might not be what you want to use in Photoshop. So I'm going to show you how to do, we could make a pattern in Photoshop too, and define a pattern, but that might take a little bit longer than we have. So I'm going to show you a trick on how to make a pattern as well. Okay, a halftone pattern using some of the tools that they have in here. Although I could just, one thing I could do, and this is an easy way to do it, I guess. I could make a big, so make a rectangle. So it's big, about the same size as my, I'm gonna make it small again, the scale, but okay. Now I'm gonna copy that. And I'm going to paste that here into, I'm going to copy it. Command C to copy and Command V to paste. There we go. All right, so now I got a halftone pattern that covers my entire design. And I could put a mask on there. So that's what I'm doing right here, mask. We can go into masks later more. But down, I'm sorry that it might be hard to see what I'm doing in Photoshop, but I've got the user interface as big as it'll go in Photoshop. I don't know why Illustrator gives you more options than Photoshop, different teams or something, I don't know. I wish they had the same options as Illustrator. But down here, there's a little button. It looks like a black and white Japanese flag, a little square with a dot in it, and that's a mask. And using the mask, I can now, you know, create shapes, or here, I can use the lasso tool to block out some of this stuff. And I'm just going to do Control, while I'm in the mask, I'm going to do Control backspace, which is going to fill with the background color. And now I've got this halftone-y shape. So you could just use you could just create a halftone pattern really quick in Illustrator, then use a mask. I can go in here with a brush and I can I can kind of draw with I can paint it out I can paint out the halftone, and I could draw with it. Here's like a snake, halftone snake. Little rattlesnake. So you can do all you want, but then maybe you want to create like a gradient or something, and that's something that it's harder to do in Illustrator than in Photoshop. In Photoshop, it's really good for making sort of gradient, and they've got tools for that. So I'm recording this so I can put this up later, and you guys can look back over this. For now, just be content to follow around. So I'm going to create a gradient layer. And let me show you the gradient fill there. I'm going to change this to black. I got to drag everything down to the screen because I usually use all my monitors for this. So I'm going to change that to black and change this to black. Okay, so now I've got just a black to white gradient here. Okay, okay, and it's not seeing because I got it. So here I got a gradient. Okay, it goes from dark to light. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a duplicate of this image. Okay. So I just got a duplicate because I don't want to ruin my first one. So what I'm going to do is you go up here to image mode. So right now we're in RGB color, which is where we should be. But we're going to change this to grayscale. Okay. And you're not going to see any difference. All right. I'm just going to flatten it. So it's going to look the same thing because we're already in grayscale. But what we're doing is we're taking it. Now we're going to go to bitmap. So grayscale's got like 256 different like levels of value. Bitmap's only got 2. It's got white or black, or whatever color you want to work with, but white and black. And so when you do this, it's going to ask you how you want to do it. And we want to use halftone screen. Okay, from the drop down, and we're going to hit OK. It's going to ask us some stuff. I know from previous experience, actually, this is probably good because it's the last thing I did. There's different shapes. So, I mean, not as many as you can make with like Illustrator, but they got some stuff like a cross, a square, a line, ellipse, a diamond. I'm just going to do round because it's traditional. And I'm going to hit OK. Don't worry about the degree. 45 is fine. You can play with these if you want, but I usually keep this at 45, but change the frequency to higher or lower. That's going to give you more or less lines per inch. And we'll just have to see. We'll see what this looks like. And if I zoom in, you can see I've got a halftone now. You can see I can go way in. It's as round as you're going to get, because remember there's no I actually kind of want them bigger. So I'm going to Command Z, go back and do that again. Image, mode, bitmap. Okay, and then I'm going to change this. I thought 28 was going to be better, but for some reason I did 53s last time. I'm not sure why. Yeah, so this is more like what I wanted to see. So now you can kind of see that, and because we don't have any anti-aliasing, it's got this sort of jagged effect, but that's all right. But now we've got a gradient halftone. It looks like a gradient, but it's really just 2 colors. And you're probably thinking, well, how does this help me? Well, now we just go back through what we did. We go mode, but go back to grayscale. And just 1:1's fine. And then we go image, mode, RGB. And now we've got a halftone pattern in RGB. So I can get rid of this. And the thing is, I'll show you something when we get back here. So now I've got a gradient, but I'm going to put it at the top. And I'm going to turn on, some of those objects that I had. And you can't see them because it's giving me the white and the black. And all I want to do is have the black. This is one of the things that I haven't shown you guys this yet, but I guess I'll show it to you now. I want to do use channels to separate the black from the white. So channels are just, channels are a mask. What a mask does, this has come from old time photography days. So imagine a negative where the way photography works is the light hits something and exposes it. So the mask is anything that's black, the light can't get through. So anything that's white, it'll be like transparent, the light will get through and expose the film. So that's really what a mask is. You're masking off parts of it that you don't want to see. And so that's what the channels are. The channels are actually like the blue, green, red that you see. And if I turn off one, you can see between green and red, we got the yellow, you know. If I turn off the green, we're just seeing that because it's just the red coming through. It's not mixing with anything. We get cyan, see? Because red and blue, it's not the opposite, but it's the between. CMYK is the in between RGB because one's reflective and one's so you get the Y, you get the cyan, and you get the magenta if you do that. But anyway, what we really want is just the black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to just hold down Control and click on it. You can also load it from down here. So now what I have is I have a selection of all the white. What I want is a selection of all the black. So if I go up here to select, I can do inverse. It's Shift Control I. And now that's going to give me a selection of all the black. This is useful for so many things. I'm going to go over this again, but I'm recording this, so hopefully you guys can go over this and try it yourself. So now I'm going to create a color fill layer, which is solid. They renamed it to solid color. If I keep calling it color fill layer, it's because that's what it used to be called, and I haven't kept up. So now I've created a color fill layer that's like this pink. Let me turn off the background. So now I just turned off the thing. Now I've got a halftone pattern in a color layer, solid color layer, that I can change to any color I want. So here's the color picker. And so by double clicking on that, I can change it to blue or yellow or what have you. It's like purple, so I'm gonna do like a lighter purple, like a magenta. And then I'm going to, so now I've got like this halftone pattern. If I zoom in, you can see how fun that is. And so I got kind of like a halftone thing going on. And I can clip it to this. So if I can just go create clipping mask. And now I've got like this halftone pattern that's in this shape. That's pretty fun and cool. And you can do lots of fun things. You can take any, you know, I could take a black and white. Let me see if I got a black and white image I can do. Okay, so here, I happen to have a brutalist architectural like image right here that that looks like I found it because it looks like an outer space thing. This looks like it's from Hoth or something. I don't even think it's black and white. It's just like that's how stark it is. So this is a Soviet brutalist thing. And right now this wouldn't work. It's a bunch of different tones and everything like that. But if actually, let me drag this whole thing into, I don't have to make a duplicate layer. I can just do this. And I'm just going to do that process again. So image, mode, grayscale. Okay. And then image, mode, bitmap. Okay, I'm just going to leave the same settings as I had before. And now, I mean, see that effect? It's like from an old newspaper, something like that. The headquarters, thanks for doing that. Yeah, It's pretty cool though, isn't it? I was like, yeah, they were thinking of the future. I don't know. I love it. This isn't the kind of brutalist architecture most people think of, but it's definitely brutalist. Um, but here, so now I've got this, and if I just go backwards, image mode, grayscale, okay, image mode, RGB color, and then I can do it from here too. I can go to channels, RGB. I'm going to select that. Go back to my layers, and Shift I to get the inverse, and then solid color. I'll do that pink again. Now I got a pink version of this. So here's my design's already coming together here. Yeah, so you can have fun doing that. So you can be any kind of tonal quality you want. So you could paint this with like all kinds of brush strokes and then do like a half-tone pattern on that, and have some fun, with that. So like the fact that I'm limiting you guys to one color or two colors, but each one with no tints, you can get around that by using halftones. And so there's a lot you can actually play with. There's something else when I was doing this, I wanted to show you guys something. What I was thinking, it was something I wanted to show you guys. I don't know what it could have been. I guess it must have not been important. It probably was very important, and I'm just flaking out. Anyway, so and this is also a good way. These color fill layers are, well, see, it says color fill right there, but why does it say in here, it says solid color, but then they didn't change the name on the default thing where it says color fill. So I'm right. But anyway, this is a good way to set up. We talked about how if you're setting things up in Illustrator, it's a good way to set up using, spot colors and things like that. When you're working in Photoshop, it's a good idea to work in color fill layers, okay? So you can create a color fill layer just by going down here to the adjustment layers, creating a solid color. It's going to fill the whole thing, okay? I don't want to do that. What I want to do is like maybe create a small shape and then just solid color layer. Because usually I want to start with a blank canvas, but you could do it the other way and invert it. I can always and then I could just fill it with Alt backspace is going to fill with the foreground color, and then Control backspace is going to fill with the background color, and mask deal with just black and white. So, grayscale, because I could do like a 50% gray. Oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to fill it with the foreground color. And so now I've got like a 50% transparency because I used this gray in there. And if I create another shape and I fill that with white, you can see that now it's completely opaque. But anyway, if you use, your guys are just going to be dealing with, if you just hit Command Control, you just hit D, it sends it back to white and black. And I just want it to be all like black. So I'm just filling this with black. And then I can just draw on it. So I can kind of draw on it. And then I can, so this is when if you're doing it this way, we can hit D again. So if you're doing it this way, something you can't see that I'm doing is I've got my left hand on the keyboard and I'm just hitting X. See how the X is going back and forth between the foreground and the background color? So when you're drawing in a mask, you can switch. So here I'm drawing with white, and then I hit X and I can erase with black. So I don't have to keep going back and forth. I can just quickly color and erase, color and erase, and do that really quick, and just speeds up your process a lot. And so that's a good way to thinking about figure ground. So you got ground, so make this, so I can paint in this, and then I can erase into it. So I'm making my little penguin guy here. I can rapidly do that. And it's just a quick way of working. But anyway, it's a nice way to do is if you work in a color fill layer this way, and you can have all the textural elements you want and everything. But if you want to change the color, well, you can really do that really quickly. And it comes really handy when you're going to make your transparencies or when you're going to do your files, because then you can just make your, and it's okay to have a bunch of different layers as you explore and have knockouts. So like I might have one shape that, you know, you might want to use white as a color fill layer to create like an overlapping. So as like a knockout. So you can see that it looks like I've erased it, but it's really just a white layer that's over it. So you can do that too. But I try and like keep your color layers to a minimum. We'll talk more on Monday about how to, right now just do your design. Don't, you know, just if you're thinking about it, don't worry about it. But if you're thinking about it, do it. We'll talk more about that on Monday. I know you guys can't follow along, so it's probably so I'm going to, so I got to get these captioned, okay? And then I'm going to, after I'm done with this, I'm actually going to stop recording because this is important to this. So like, and then what my plan is that after I get these captioned, okay, then I'm going to, I'll have a link to it. I don't know if I'll put them on you. I don't know what I got to figure that out. And then I will, I'll upload those to the library. There'll be a link to it in the library, and maybe I'll post that out. I hope to get that done. Well, I'm going to get the video ready to get captioned today. I don't know how long it's going to take to get captioned. I know it's a little bit, but hopefully, I just knowing where things are, knowing how to do it is going to be enough to get you there, or get you thinking about it. It's not a perfect solution, but it's what we got. You know. Any questions? Okay, well, good job, everyone, working forward. Remember, Monday, we're going to work forward on our project 1, explore composition, variation of your composition, and then, you know, do like 10 of those little real rough thumbnails, and then have one that's more realized, like start bringing it in, rendering it out, seeing stylistically proof of concept what it's going to look like, and start kind of grappling with the idea of using the tools the way, you know, that limited color palette and figure ground and stuff like that. See if you can demonstrate some really good use of figure ground. That would be nice. Any other questions? All right, then I'm going to unceremoniously end meeting. All right, you guys have a good weekend. Stay safe and do great work. All right, cheers. Bye-bye.